Can you guess where I found a beautiful country with incredible history and lots of fun things to do?
I'm hanging with the pearly kings and queens, so welcome to London.
Welcome to Laura McKenzie's Traveler.
What a view. And look, Big Ben. Hi, I'm Laura McKenzie, and welcome to London, one of my all-time favorite cities. Okay, now here's a trivia question for you. Big Ben, is it A, the clock, B, the bell, C, the tower? Tick-tock, tick-tock. B, the bell. You were right. Okay, I got a lot more here in London to show you, and I promise no more trivia questions. So if you're ready, let's get started.
With over 600 square miles of urban jungle and over 9 million people, London can easily knock the socks off a first-time visitor. With all the sights, sounds, and smells of 30-plus cultures conspiring to assault your senses and awaken your appetite, I find it helps to break London down into easier-to-digest neighborhood-sized portions. So, let's hop on board a double-decker bus or hail one of London's famous cabbies and we'll hit the ground running. First stop, Camden Market.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Welcome to the world-famous Stables Market, Camden, London, England!
Weekends are when to hit this market, geared to teens and tweenies looking for bargains.
You want t-shirts, dresses, scarves, and bags, you can find it here. You want tarot readings, psychic readings, you can find that here. Tattoos, want a good piece of pizza? Find that too.
Seek and ye shall find, that's my motto. And who doesn't love those street performers? Yep, I'm working on it. All in all, the Camden Market is a neighborhood where the locals definitely tread, or should I say cruise. On the edge of St. James Park is Trafalgar Square, home to some gorgeous fountains, a monument to Lord Nelson, more fountains, the National Gallery, housing one of Europe's largest collections of paintings by the great masters, and fountains. Did I mention the fountains? A great place to cool your heels, or even kick them up a bit. Until recently, Trafalgar Square's most infamous residents were the hundreds of pigeons that got underfoot. But the new mayor put an end to that. The old tradition of pigeon feeding was replaced with a rather unusual form of pest control.
So he's an American bird. Very, if you know what you're doing, very easy to train. But we use them over here just to keep pigeons down, you know. I don't want to get rid of too many pigeons because do yourself out of work then. Look, see this? Look. Right in. Really give him a headache. Yeah, and I'm going.
I've heard of a chicken hawk, but a pigeon hawk? For birds of a different feather, head on over to Covent Garden. This locale, made famous in the play My Fair Lady, is London's answer to New York's Greenwich Village. There's no shortage of things to see and do and eat, and of course, the shopping is fantastic for more unusual finds. Music lovers will find a lot to enjoy at Covent Garden. Everything from performances at the famed Royal Opera House to impromptu open-air arias. And for the kids, they'll be bouncing off the walls with fun. Okay, maybe not the walls, but they'll have a blast just the same. For shopaholics like me, Notting Hill is the place to go for a weekend shopping spree. The famous Saturday morning antiques market on Portobello Road is where you'll find scads of pre-loved treasures displayed on outdoor tables, just waiting for someone to give them a new home. Buy me, they all seem to say as you walk by. How can you resist?
This is the largest ethnic weekend market in London. If you want Indian, Jamaican, West Indian, arts, crafts, whatever, you can find it here if you're willing to do a little bit of haggling and fight the crowds. Who knows? You could find treasure.
Bargain, bargain, haggle, haggle. If it doesn't have a roof over it, it can be plucked from the table cheaper. Okay, moving along. I'm getting hungry. Must be time to head on over to Chinatown. Where's my rickshaw? Once a run-down area between Shaftesbury Avenue and Leicester Square, Gerrard Street has been transformed into a colorful, thriving neighborhood that caters to the Chinese community. And locals and tourists alike descend on Chinatown for its delicious restaurants and cheap souvenirs. Next, we head off to a neighborhood that looks more like Times Square than merry old England. Time to hop on a double-decker bus to Piccadilly Circus. Piccadilly Circus today is known for the famous winged angel in the traffic circle. It's London's most touristy square, and it's particularly popular with a younger crowd. Music stores, fast food, and traffic, not to mention the infamous Trocadero, a huge tourist mecca. But the bumper cars and bowling alley inside are great for kids on a rainy day. Full-length Shakespeare play too much for you, huh? Try this show on for size. And sports fans' dreams come true at Lily White Famous Sports Store. Let's be adventurous and take the Tube for our last neighborhood destination.
Well, music fans everywhere will recognize the crosswalk behind me. It's the famous Abbey Road crosswalk, the symbol of the London music scene during the heyday of the Beatles. People still come to get that famous shot. Good photo op.
Laura McKenzie's Traveler will be right back. Welcome back to Laura McKenzie's Traveler from London.
You know, all that pomp and circumstance, the crowns, the thrones, the jewels, that's what I love about London. Royalty. It's such an integral part of the living history here. So much to explore. But where do you start? Buckingham Palace, of course. Originally purchased in 1762 by King George III for a queen's house, Buckingham Palace has been rebuilt and added on to several times over the years. With its Corinthian columns and gilded gates, this ornate palace has been the official royal residence since Queen Victoria moved in 1837. Guards on foot and horseback have been keeping watch over the sovereign since 1660. The changing of the guard, or guard mounting as it's officially called, is full of that pomp and circumstance I like. And obviously, so do millions of other tourists. Buckingham Palace may be the official royal residence, but the Queen's favorite place to call home is Windsor Castle. Located just 40 minutes outside of London in the Berkshire countryside, Windsor Castle is the largest continuously inhabited castle in the world.
This place is so great. I just heard somebody say, wow, this looks like a movie set. Is it real? Does anybody live here? Yes, it's real, and yes, somebody lives here.
First built by William the Conqueror in 1066, the original structure was built from timber with earth fortifications. He chose the site high above the River Thames and on the edge of a Saxon hunting ground because it was only a day's march from the Tower of London. Windsor was originally intended to guard the western approaches to the capital. The castle was later rebuilt in stone, with Henry II adding the round tower and the original stone outer wall. St. George's Chapel was started in 1475 by Edward IV and completed some 50 years later by Henry VIII, who's buried inside the chapel along with 9 other monarchs. The chapel is dedicated to the patron saint of the Order of the Garter, Britain's highest order of chivalry, and ranks among the finest examples of late medieval architecture in the United Kingdom. The castle has remained mostly unchanged since the early 19th century, except for the restoration work that occurred following the devastating fire in 1992. For 900 years, Windsor Castle has been home to the British monarchy, and from the looks of those stone walls, I'd guess it's going to be around for another 900 years as well. The castle is located right in the center of town, so plan some extra time to stroll down the cobblestone streets of New Windsor.
Wow, a great castle and now a great shopping street. Is this a good place or what?
The shopping here is much more relaxed than in London. Outdoor cafes are nestled between the historic Georgian and Victorian homes and shops, a great place to take a break.
Come on, you can tell me. This is exactly what you expected to see in England, isn't it? I knew it.
Old world charm and classic hospitality combine in Windsor, creating a country village that just says welcome. William Shakespeare is said to have written The Merry Wives of Windsor here. Looking for that special royal family souvenir? This is the place. Windsor is about a 45-minute drive from central London, or a half-hour on the train, so it's easy to take a trip into London for the day.
You want to do something really English? Stop into a pub. Everybody comes in for conversation, a pint of beer, and pub grub. Now that is great. You can get a ploughman's lunch, you can get a meat pie, so terribly British. You know what? Every one of these pubs has a story.
A priest, a beefeater, and a solicitor walk into a pub. No, not those kinds of stories. These pubs tell the history of England. Pubs are where great novels were written, great laws were conceived and tested, great rivalries were fought, and great reunions won. A place to celebrate, reflect, or grab a bite of pub grub, as the Brits say. Place a pub crawl at the top of your tourist to-do list the next time you're in England. Or something a bit more cultural, visit the Brompton Oratory and the Royal Albert Hall. Built between 1880 and 1884, the Brompton Oratory is the church of a community of priests called Oratorians. Good speakers, I'd imagine. It's the second largest Catholic church in London. As one of the world's leading entertainment venues, Royal Albert Hall has hosted over 150,000 performances since its opening concert in 1871, and it's home to the wildly popular BBC Proms and the Princess Trust Concert. Kensington Palace was also a royal home to several monarchs and their families, including everyone's favorite royal, Diana, the Princess of Wales. The late princess's private secretary shared some of her memories of working at Kensington Palace.
The palace behind us, visitors can go in, but where did Princess Di actually live? Where were her apartments and where did you work?
Well, if I show you, as we turn around here, just to the left of those gates, there's a wing that you can't see behind the trees. And her office was underneath, her apartments were on the first floor. It was a beautiful layout and the apartments are stunning. It was an amazing place. The lounge was fantastic with a piano in for the princess to sit at and play.
And your office was right below?
Below, yes. We were right next door to the kitchens, but we were very beautifully decorated too. We were very lucky.
A public playground is being named for Princess Diana in the gardens of Kensington Palace, and the palace itself has some of the rooms open for royal voyeurs like myself to have a look around.
Laura McKenzie's Traveler will be right back. Welcome back to Laura McKenzie's Traveler from London.
If you only have one day to spend in London and you ask me what should I see, I'd have to say the Tower of London. From the Beefeaters to the Bloody Tower to the Crown Jewels, it's the history of England behind those walls.
Built by William the Conqueror in the 11th century, the tower has hosted many famous guests behind these walls, some of whom didn't live to tell the tale. Sir Walter Raleigh, Sir William Wallace, Lady Jane Grey, to name a few, and don't forget those two infamous wives of Henry VIII who lost their heads over him. The 3 million guests who visit the tower these days get to leave with their heads intact and filled with some amazing stories, because the yeoman warders, or beefeaters, always have a legend or a ghost story to tell.
Well, the ravens have always been in the tower, nesting in the trees, later on in the turrets. Legend, or of course, as you say, myth has told us that should the ravens leave the grounds of the tower, then the White Tower, the centre, the heart of this place, Her Majesty's oldest palace and fortress, would crumble to dust. But more importantly, the monarchy of England would cease to be. So it will not surprise you. By royal decree in 1660, it was laid down by King Charles II that we must always keep ravens here within the grounds of the tower. And to this day, we keep 6.
But if it's the spooky stories that give you the shivers, come for the reservation-only key ceremony at closing, when they lock all the doors. It will give you goosebumps. London probably has more landmarks and fun things to do per square mile than any other European city. So, how do you choose? You don't. You just go everywhere. And don't miss the Palace of Westminster, former royal residence and home to Parliament. Majestically overlooking the River Thames, it's a combination of original medieval and Gothic revival structures built in the 1800s. One of Parliament's two towers, Big Ben, with its 14-foot-long minute hand, is the most recognizable sight in all of England. During World War II, a bomb destroyed part of Parliament, but the clock tower was unharmed, and Big Ben continued to strike away the hours, a welcome reassurance of hope to all who heard its distinctive sound.
Ah, the London Bridge. Wrong. It's the Tower Bridge.
One of the largest and most sophisticated drawbridges in the world, the Tower Bridge, is probably the most misidentified landmark as well. Originally built in the late 1800s to relieve London Bridge of its snarling traffic jams, 150,000 vehicles cross the Tower Bridge every day. And by the way, the London Bridge was shipped to Arizona as a tourist attraction. They thought they were getting the Tower Bridge. Oops. Perhaps the best way to get an insight into the social and political history of London is a quick tour of its many cathedrals. Tales of kings and queens, power and passion are told through the many stained glass windows, Gothic arches and spirals, and stone sentries that adorn these often controversial landmarks. From the humble facade of St. Bartholomew's Church, the restrained elegance of St. Paul's Cathedral, where Princess Di was married, to the excesses of St. Stephen Walbrook and Southwark cathedrals, these monuments are testaments to the traditions typical of their times. The granddaddy of them all is Westminster Abbey, whose legendary history is surpassed only by its beauty. Okay, history class out of session. Let's hit the park. There's plenty of action available here. If people watching is more your speed, you can always grab a pint and soak up a few rays. Leisure time in London. Ah, it's a dog's life.
Where to stay, where to stay. Bed and breakfast, full-service hotel, English charm, or high-tech and trendy. Well, before you result to eeny, meeny, miny, mo, the most important thing to consider, well, next to price, of course, is location.
Originally built by the second Duke of Buckingham, beginning in 1666 as a country retreat, Clifton House is one of England's finest country houses and has been a center of influence, wealth, and political power for over 300 years. Clifton has welcomed almost every British monarch since George I and is the former home of Lady Astor. Such notables as George Bernard Shaw, President Roosevelt, and Winston Churchill were among the overnight guests. Now an internationally renowned five-star hotel, Clifton House invites you to follow in the footsteps of its former famous guests and relax and play in its luxurious surroundings. Whether you're checked into one of the original bedrooms like the Lady Astor Suite or one of the newly converted rooms in the stable block, you're going to find the most luxurious and comfortable accommodations this side of the Thames. There's no shortage of things to do while staying at Clifton. You can stroll the well-maintained grounds for hours, but my favorite is taking a lazy cruise on the Thames.
You can book the Susie Ann for drinks, lunch, even a three-course meal. Cheers. What a life.
I know I certainly had a great time during my stay at England's finest home away from home. It was an experience of a lifetime, and I can't wait to come back and do it all over again. What's the best way to see museums on vacation?
Museum passes are a terrific way to save money, but they're also a great way to avoid queues, to avoid lines. And in certain parts of the world, in Europe especially, you can spend an hour and a half waiting in line just to get into a museum, even if it's free. So a museum pass will allow you to bypass the crowds, get into a fast queue, and also save money on multiple museum visits. Another thing to remember is even with a pass, you might want to consider going very early in the morning or very late in the day.
Laura McKenzie's Traveler will be right back. Welcome back to Laura McKenzie's Traveler from London.
Okay, let me see if I understand how they do this in Britain. Now, Clifton is a country house, not to be confused with a country cottage, which is much smaller, or a country chateau, which is a country house in France, so that has no relevancy here, or a castle, which has a drawbridge and a moat, or a palace, which is for the royalty. Okay, I think I got it. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of England with me. Be sure to join me again next time from a brand new place somewhere else around the world. Until then, I'm Laura McKenzie. Bye-bye.